That's Stoicism. See, Meditations isn't just an old book. It's a blueprint for how to stay human when the world is trying to make you anything but. When Marcus wrote those words, he wasn't trying to be remembered. He was trying to hold on to his own sanity, his own goodness, in the middle of pain, politics and pressure most of us can't even fathom. And the crazy part, what he figured out back then, applies to everything we're still struggling with now. So if you've ever felt like you're trying to hold it all together in a world that won't stop falling apart, this is for you. Not because Stoicism is some trendy self-help hack, but because it's real, it's raw, and it's built for people like us. People who are tired of being reactive, tired of chasing meaning, and finally ready to create it. Now, if that resonates with you, even just a little, there's one simple, free way you can support what we're building here. It means a lot more than you might think. Hit that subscribe button. That's it. If you're into wisdom that actually applies to real life, you're in the right place. Let's dig into the lessons that helped an emperor stay human and can help you do the same. Marcus Aurelius didn't write Meditations for an audience. He wasn't hoping for fame, followers, or a spot on a bestseller list. He wasn't building a brand. He was writing to himself, quietly, privately, honestly. And that's exactly why it cuts deeper than most books ever could. It wasn't edited for public approval. It wasn't shaped to impress scholars or flatter emperors. It was a man, alone with his thoughts, trying to hold himself together in a world that kept trying to pull him apart. And in that brutal honesty, we find something rare, truth that hasn't been diluted by ego. He wasn't trying to sound wise. He was trying to stay decent. He was trying to remind himself how to respond when the world disappointed him, how to remain calm when others lost their temper, how to hold on to virtue when it would have been easier to give in to rage, bitterness, or despair. That's what makes Meditations feel so alive. It doesn't talk at you. It whispers with you. It walks alongside your worst days and offers you something no lecture ever could: understanding. It doesn't pretend things are easy. It just insists they're worth enduring. You read it and you don't see a marble statue of a perfect man. You see someone struggling, a ruler facing plagues, wars, betrayals, burying multiple children, losing his wife, and still trying to get up in the morning and act with dignity. He writes things like, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive." But you know from the tone, he's probably writing that because he doesn't feel like getting out of bed. He's coaching himself, not preaching to you. And somehow, that hits harder than all the polished advice in the world. That's the strange paradox of Meditations. It was never meant to be shared, and yet that's what makes it so shareable. Its power lies in its rawness. Its unpolished nature is what gives it polish in a deeper sense. Because it's not afraid to look messy, it feels clean. Because it's not performative, it's profound. You don't feel like you're reading a philosopher on a pedestal. You feel like you're reading a man sitting in a war tent, holding a pen with one hand and holding back grief with the other. And maybe that's why, after all these years, it still resonates. Because in a world addicted to appearance, to performance, to pretending, Marcus shows us what it looks like to be real. He writes, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That line alone has outlived centuries of political theory, moral essays, and religious sermons. Not because it's perfectly worded, but because it's painfully honest. It gets under your skin and asks, are you being the person you keep talking about becoming? Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But to do that, you have to first confront the parts of yourself you'd rather hide." That's what Marcus was doing. He was confronting his ego, his anger, his fear of death, his frustration with others. And in doing so, he was doing something many of us avoid: facing the truth without flinching. That's not weakness, that's courage. And that's why Meditations endures, because it models a kind of strength that doesn't come from conquest, but from inner clarity. There's something deeply human about reading the words of a Roman emperor who admits he loses his temper, who reminds himself not to crave applause, who struggles with ambition and grief just like the rest of us. It reminds you that titles and power don't protect anyone from the human condition. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." Marcus took that seriously. Every page is an attempt to know himself better, so that he could lead better, love better, live better. That kind of self-awareness is timeless, and yet it's more than just introspection. It's discipline. He's not journaling to vent. He's writing to train his mind, to remind himself of the kind of man he wants to be. That's why the book returns to the same themes again and again. Control your emotions, don't seek praise, remember death, serve the common good. These weren't philosophical decorations, they were guardrails. They were lifelines. They were a code he could return to when everything else fell apart. Plato wrote that the first and best victory is to conquer self. Marcus lived that battle every day. You can feel it in the repetition, the constant looping back to the same reminders. Because when life keeps hitting you, you don't need a new idea. You need to remember what you already know. He was teaching himself how to stay rooted, how to keep his footing, how to not be swept away by the flood of chaos that comes for all of us sooner or later. And this is where the magic happens, because even though Meditations was written for one man, it ends up being for everyone. Why? Because it's not trying to impress anyone. It's not pretending to have all the answers. It's not afraid to say, "I'm still learning." And in that vulnerability, we see ourselves. We see our own attempts to grow, our own failures to live up to our ideals, and we realize we're not alone. That realization matters, because in today's world, we're drowning in information, but starving for wisdom. We scroll endlessly, consume constantly, but rarely pause to reflect. Marcus reminds us to slow down, to think, to choose, to live on purpose, not just on autopilot. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But Marcus shows us what the examined life actually looks like. It's not glamorous, it's not perfect. It's a daily effort to stay aligned with what matters. And what mattered to Marcus? Not wealth, not legacy, not comfort. What mattered was character, integrity, compassion, resilience. He wasn't trying to be remembered. He was trying to be useful. And that distinction between chasing attention and offering value is what separates wisdom from noise. It's easy to get swept up in modern performance, to curate your life instead of living it. But Marcus pulls you back to something older, something quieter, something stronger. He reminds you that the point isn't to be liked by others, it's to live in a way you respect. To be at peace with yourself when your head hits the pillow. That kind of peace can't be bought, it can't be faked, it has to be earned. And Marcus spent his life trying to earn it. When you read his words, you're not getting advice from someone who had it all figured out. You're getting field notes from someone who was in the mud with you, fighting the same internal battles, stumbling over the same temptations, and trying every day to rise a little higher. That humility is what gives the book its power. It doesn't shout, it doesn't preach, it just walks beside you. That's the kind of philosophy we need more of today. Not abstract theory, not academic jargon, but real grounded wisdom that helps you handle life when it's hard, that helps you build an inner compass you can trust, that teaches you how to act with grace when everything around you feels graceless. Marcus reminds us that leadership isn't about dominance, it's about discipline. That strength isn't about control, it's about character. And that peace isn't something the world gives you, it's something you build from within. His life, his writing, his example, they all point back to that one truth. The real work is always inside. So when you open Meditations, you're not stepping into history. You're stepping into a conversation, a very old, very intimate, very human conversation. And the beauty of it is that you're invited in. You don't need to be a scholar. You don't need to understand Latin. You just need to be honest with yourself. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all, that the path to wisdom isn't found in pretending to know everything. It's found in admitting where you still struggle and showing up anyway. Day by day, thought by thought, page by page, just like Marcus did. Because that's what being stoic really means. Not shutting down your feelings, but learning how to carry them with strength. Not pretending you're perfect, but trying to be better. Not chasing applause, but living by principle, quietly, consistently, with courage. And that kind of life, it doesn't need an audience, it just needs your full attention. You don't need a take. That might sound strange in a world that runs on opinions, but it's true. You don't have to weigh in on every headline, every debate, every drama. You don't need to comment, post, argue, or declare where you stand every time the world offers you a spotlight. Marcus Aurelius lived in a world full of political tension, betrayal, war, and social division. And even then he knew, the real power is in knowing when not to speak. He wrote, "You always have the option of having no opinion. There is never a need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control." That's more than just advice. It's a strategy. It's a form of psychological self-defense. Because every time you respond to something that doesn't need your energy, you hand over a piece of your mind. You give away focus. You lose control of your inner world. We live in a time where not reacting is treated like ignorance. Stay silent? You must not care. Don't post your take? You must not be paying attention. But Marcus wasn't trying to appear informed. He was trying to be free. And freedom, in the Stoic sense, isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about not being pulled by every passing emotion, every noise, every impulse to react. Think about the pressure we feel to respond to everything around us. Something goes viral, and there's this instant urge. What do I think about it? Do I agree or disagree? Am I on the right side of this? But that pressure comes with a cost. It costs you clarity. It costs you peace. And more importantly, it distracts you from the only thing you can truly control, your own behavior. Carl Jung once said, "Where wisdom reigns, there is no conflict between thinking and feeling." But that harmony only happens when we pause long enough to observe our own mind before jumping in. Not every thought is worth expressing. Not every issue needs your take. And not every moment requires you to take a stand, especially when that stand is based more on fear of judgment than actual conviction. This isn't about apathy, it's about discernment. Marcus wasn't passive, he was deliberate. He knew how to filter what entered his consciousness. He trained himself to recognize which things deserved his energy and which were just noise. Because noise can feel urgent. It wants your attention, it begs for a reaction, but it rarely offers anything in return. Wisdom, on the other hand, waits, it observes. It sees the storm, but doesn't step into it unless it's necessary. Aristotle said, "To avoid criticism, say nothing, do nothing, be nothing." But Marcus wasn't trying to avoid criticism, he just wasn't controlled by it. He didn't speak just to be heard. He spoke when it served the moment, when it aligned with his principles, when silence would have been dishonest. And that's the real difference. Silence isn't weakness when it's chosen from strength. It becomes weakness when it's used to hide. We've all had moments where someone said something wrong, something offensive, something clearly out of line, and we jumped in. But later, we felt exhausted. not because we stood up for something, but because deep down, we knew our reaction wasn't from clarity. It was from reflex, from ego, from the need to be seen as right. Marcus trained himself to question that impulse, not to suppress his voice, but to elevate his character. And this training, it wasn't theoretical. He was the most powerful man in the world. Every day, he dealt with flattery, betrayal, crises, and manipulation. But instead of getting caught in the whirlwind of politics and emotion, he returned again and again to the same question: is this worth my peace? That question, is this worth my peace, could save you hours of stress every week. You see a post online, it bothers you. You feel your fingers itching to type. But wait, ask the question: is this argument worth your clarity? Will this comment actually bring understanding, or just more division? We've been trained to think that engagement equals value, that if you're not actively responding, you're irrelevant. But that mindset is rooted in fear. Fear of being overlooked, fear of being excluded, fear of being wrong. Stoicism teaches us that relevance isn't about being loud, it's about being centered. When you choose not to weigh in, something unexpected happens. You start noticing more. You hear what people actually mean, not just what they say. You catch the patterns behind the problems. You begin to respond from wisdom instead of emotion. That's not detachment, it's awareness. It's the ability to sit in silence and listen to life before adding your own voice to the mix. Socrates, in his commitment to self-knowledge, was famous for saying, "I know that I know nothing." That wasn't defeat, it was liberation. Because once you stop needing to appear all-knowing, you free yourself to actually learn. And real learning starts with silence. That silence can feel uncomfortable at first, especially when everyone else is shouting. But give it time, let it deepen, let it become your default mode, observing first, then choosing. And not choosing by impulse, but by value. What's important to you? What do you stand for? What matters when the noise fades? Marcus wasn't trying to escape life. He was trying to engage with it more wisely. He knew that the mind is like a city. It needs gates. Not every voice deserves entry. Not every opinion deserves attention. Not every emotion needs a reaction. And this mental gatekeeping, this choice to pause, is what creates inner stability. It's easy to mistake silence for indifference. But the Stoics saw silence as strength. They understood that not all battles are worth fighting. Some are distractions dressed as purpose. Some are emotional traps. Some are just chaos looking for company. And if you're not careful, you become part of the noise you were trying to escape. Think about how much energy we waste trying to defend our identity, trying to explain ourselves, trying to prove we're good, moral, thoughtful, smart. But here's a hard truth. The people who already believe in you don't need convincing, and the people who are committed to misunderstanding you won't be swayed by any argument. So what if you stopped trying? What if you let your actions be your defense? What if you let your peace speak for itself? There's a story about Plato being slandered by someone in public. A friend urged him to respond, to defend himself. Plato calmly replied, "I will live in such a way that no one will believe him." That's the essence of Stoicism. Integrity, not argument. Action, not opinion. Character, not clapbacks. You don't have to win every debate. You don't have to clear up every misunderstanding. Sometimes the best response is to live so clearly that people can't twist your truth. And that kind of clarity, of purpose, of identity, of values, can only grow in silence. The truth is, your opinion is precious. It's not meant to be tossed into every fight. It's meant to be cultivated, sharpened, deepened, so that when you do choose to speak, your words actually carry weight. And here's something you might not expect. The more you practice this, the more people begin to respect you. Not because you're loud, but because you're steady. Because in a world of noise, your silence stands out. Your calm becomes a kind of authority, and your restraint becomes a kind of power. That's what Marcus was building, a quiet power, a durable peace. Not because life was easy, but because he refused to be a slave to his own reactions. So the next time you feel the urge to weigh in, to jump into the debate, to prove your point, to set the record straight, pause, breathe, ask yourself, is this noise or is this necessary? Am I being pulled or am I choosing? Because that pause might be the most stoic thing you do all day. And that's the real lesson here. Silence isn't the absence of a voice, it's the presence of strength. It's the space between stimulus and response, the space where your freedom lives, the space where your peace waits. So no, you don't have to weigh in. You don't have to have a take. You don't need to stamp every moment with a label. What you need is a mind that's free. Let that be your power. Let that be your peace. He wasn't pretending to be flawless. He was holding himself accountable, one mistake at a time. Most of his wisdom comes from where he fell short. That's not weakness. That's exactly what growth looks like. Marcus Aurelius, the Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world at the time, didn't sit on a golden throne and write meditations to impress anyone. He didn't craft it to gain followers, boost his image, or secure a legacy. That's what makes it powerful. It was private, honest, sometimes painfully so. It was a journal, a conversation with himself. And in that conversation, you don't find a man bragging about his triumphs. You find a man admitting, again and again, where he slipped, where his emotions got the best of him, where his ego crept in, where he forgot his values. He wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." That's not a motivational quote. That's someone coaching himself through frustration. That's a leader preparing his mind, not to explode, not to judge, but to respond with steadiness. Because Marcus knew something we often forget. Strength doesn't come from pretending to be above the struggle. It comes from being inside it and choosing not to be broken by it. We live in a culture obsessed with image, with curating perfection, with projecting certainty. But Marcus wasn't performing. He was examining. In fact, many of the entries in meditations feel like mental corrections. He'll say something like, "Don't be overheard complaining, not even to yourself." That's not him judging others. That's him checking himself. That's what Stoicism demands. Not that you never fall, but that you're honest when you do. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Marcus was doing exactly that, bringing the unconscious to light. Every frustration, every flaw, every emotional spiral, he didn't bury them. He wrote them down. He looked at them. And in doing so, he refused to let them own him. Growth doesn't look like a highlight reel. It looks like wrestling with your own thoughts. It looks like waking up and realizing, I messed up yesterday, but today I'll do better. That's the real work. Not climbing to some imagined mountaintop of enlightenment, but simply staying aware, checking yourself before you go too far, catching the slip before it turns into a spiral. Think about the last time you overreacted, said something you regretted, held onto a grudge longer than you should have. What did you do afterward? Did you blame the other person? Did you justify it? Or did you, even quietly, say, "That's on me"? That moment right there, that tiny acknowledgement, is what Marcus practiced every day. And that's where growth lives. Not in perfection, but in self-awareness. Aristotle wrote, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." Marcus took that literally. Every day he checked in, not with others, but with himself. Am I being ruled by fear, by anger, by ego? These weren't passing thoughts. They were his daily practice, his form of discipline, his mirror. And that's the difference between someone who wants to look wise and someone who becomes wise. One avoids mistakes, hides them, denies them. The other exposes them, examines them, learns from them. In one passage, Marcus reminds himself, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth." That level of humility from an emperor is staggering. And it's not just poetic, it's powerful. Because true growth doesn't come from clinging to being right. It comes from being willing to change your mind when a better truth presents itself. And isn't that the battle most of us fight every day? The tension between wanting to look right and actually being right. Between defending our pride and admitting we've got more to learn. Marcus leaned into that tension. He let it teach him. Plato once said, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." That's exactly what Marcus was attempting, daily, quietly, imperfectly. He wasn't at war with armies alone. He was at war with himself, with his impulses, his frustration, his need to control, his desire to retaliate, his hunger for recognition. He met these enemies not with force, but with awareness, and sometimes with surrender. That's what accountability is. Not punishment, not shame, but presence, owning your part, seeing yourself clearly, and choosing every time to rise a little higher. Marcus didn't celebrate himself in his writings. He corrected himself, over and over again. He would write things like, "At every hour, give your full concentration. Do everything as if it were the last thing you were doing in your life." He wasn't preaching, he was reminding himself, because like all of us, he got distracted, he got emotional, he got tired, he forgot what mattered, and instead of hiding that, he wrote it down. That's strength. Socrates taught that the unexamined life is not worth living. Marcus examined his, not once, not occasionally, but daily, even as an emperor, even during wars, even while grieving. That kind of consistency is rare, and that's where transformation begins, not in the moment of clarity, but in the habit of returning to it. You can feel his humanity in the pages. There's no ego, no arrogance, just a man trying to stay centered in the chaos of power, responsibility, loss, and temptation. He faced the same struggles we do, just amplified 1,000 times. And still, he showed up. Still, he held himself to a higher standard. Not because anyone was watching, but because he was watching. Think about that for a second. What if your life was being watched, not by others, but by your future self? The version of you 5 years from now, 10 years from now. The one who's wiser, calmer, more grounded. What would they say about the way you're living today? Would they thank you for your accountability? Or would they be cleaning up the mess your ego left behind? That's what Marcus tapped into. He wasn't writing for applause. He was writing for alignment. He was staying accountable to the only person he couldn't lie to, himself. And maybe that's the most powerful lesson of all, that real self-respect isn't built on being flawless. It's built on being real, on being honest enough to say, "I slipped, but I see it, and I'll do better tomorrow." It's not glamorous, it's not easy, but it's rare. And in a world obsessed with filters, with performance, with always appearing in control, there's something revolutionary about simply saying, "I'm still learning." So if you're on that path of holding yourself accountable, of admitting where you fall short, of choosing to grow instead of pretend, then you're already walking beside Marcus, not in history, but in practice, in mindset, in courage. Because that's what courage looks like. Not standing tall on a stage, but kneeling quietly in front of your own mistakes and saying, "Teach me." He lists the names of emperors long forgotten. Men who once ruled, who commanded armies, who shaped nations, and whose names now slip through history like dust through fingers. And then, in the same breath, Marcus Aurelius reminds himself, "I will be one of them." Forgotten. Eventually erased from memory, just like the rest. But he doesn't flinch. He doesn't despair, because he never clung to legacy. He clung to character. That shift in focus changes everything. We live in a world obsessed with legacy. How we'll be remembered, how big our name will be, how many people know who we are. Social media has only amplified this hunger. Fame now seems just a post away. Visibility feels like power. And yet, here is Marcus, the most powerful man of his time, and he's telling himself, soon you'll be ashes or bones, a mere name at most, and even that is just a sound, an echo. That's not nihilism, that's clarity. He's not saying life is meaningless, he's saying, stop trying to make your meaning depend on things that will never last. Stop chasing applause you'll never hear. Instead, build your life on something no one can take from you, your values. It's easy to confuse legacy with purpose, but legacy is external. It's how the world remembers you. Purpose is internal. It's how you live with yourself. Marcus chose the second, because legacy is a dangerous addiction. The more you chase being remembered, the more you shape your life for the crowd. You start making decisions not because they're right, but because they look impressive. You begin speaking not with honesty, but with strategy. You become less yourself and more a performance. But Marcus understood what most never do. You can't control how you'll be remembered. You can only control how you show up, what you stand for, what kind of person you are when no one's watching. That's what he meant when he said, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Not because people are watching, but because you are watching. Plato wrote, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." Marcus took that seriously. His victory wasn't over the Parthians or Germanic tribes. It was over the temptation to make his reign about power instead of principle. In a world that begged him to rule with dominance, he chose discipline. In a palace filled with temptation, he practiced restraint. In an empire that offered him worship, he humbled himself daily. Think about how rare that is. Most people, when given a taste of power, crave more. They become addicted to being seen, being followed, being praised. They want to build monuments, not just of stone, but of image. But Marcus saw through all that. He knew fame was fleeting. Praise is temporary. The crowd is fickle. What lasts is character. What matters is virtue. What endures is integrity. He reminded himself constantly that people's opinions were out of his control. He even wrote, "All is ephemeral, fame and the famous as well." And yet, how often do we live our lives as if public approval is the finish line? We work for recognition, for awards, for likes, for retweets, and then we wonder why we feel empty even after we get them. Because applause can't fill you. It can only distract you from the work that actually builds peace. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And that's what Marcus did in Meditations. Not perfectly, not all at once, but persistently. Day by day, entry by entry, he faced himself. Not as a figure of grandeur, but as a man trying to live well. Not to impress, but to align. He knew his name would fade, but his soul, that was his responsibility, that was his masterpiece. And that's why, even though he knew he'd be forgotten, he wrote anyway. Not to be remembered, but to remember himself. To keep himself centered, aligned, awake. Socrates was once told that the oracle at Delphi proclaimed him the wisest man in Athens. But Socrates didn't let it inflate his ego. He doubled down on his quest for truth, for inner clarity. He said, "I know that I know nothing." Because the goal was never to appear wise, it was to live wisely. The same thread runs through Marcus. He didn't care about appearing moral, he cared about becoming moral. And that's the invitation Stoicism extends to us, not to chase the spotlight, but to light our own path, to measure ourselves not by external applause, but by internal alignment. Did I live today in a way that reflects my values? Did I hold myself to the standard I claim to believe in? Did I do the right thing even when no one clapped? These are the questions that matter. Legacy is loud. Character is quiet. Legacy wants a crowd. Character just needs a conscience. Legacy asks, what will they say about me? Character asks, what do I know to be true? And here's the irony. If you live for legacy, you may lose both legacy and character. But if you live for character, sometimes legacy follows anyway, quietly, naturally, as a side effect, not a goal. Marcus didn't make decisions with history in mind. He made decisions with virtue in mind, and because of that, history remembers him, not for his conquests, but for his convictions. He reminds us that the size of your stage doesn't determine the strength of your soul. You don't need to lead an empire to live with integrity. You don't need a title to practice humility. You don't need 1 million followers to be grounded in purpose. You just need to decide what matters and live like it does. So what matters to you? Fame or peace? Recognition or integrity? What do you want your days to stand for? Because in the end, your life isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in the small choices you make when no one's watching. It's built when you return the shopping cart, when you admit you were wrong, when you stay honest even when it costs you, when you keep your word, not for credit, but because it's who you are. Marcus wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change." That's the mark of a man who isn't obsessed with looking right, but with being real. And that's what makes his wisdom last. Not that he had all the answers, but that he kept asking the right questions. Questions like, what kind of person do I want to be? Am I living like it? What am I clinging to that doesn't matter? He knew that death would come. That time would erase his name, that the Roman Empire would eventually fall. But he also knew that the human soul is timeless, that courage is timeless, that discipline, humility, compassion and reason, they echo far beyond any headline or statue. So maybe the goal isn't to be remembered. Maybe the goal is to be real, to live in such a way that even if no one ever tells your story, the people you touched will never forget how you made them feel. Not because you were impressive, but because you were grounded, honest, present. Don't build your life chasing applause you'll never hear. Build it on values you'll never regret. Let your name fade. Let your face disappear. Let history forget you. But let your soul remain intact. Let your integrity whisper louder than the world shouts. And when you lie down at the end of the day, may your peace be your legacy. Floods, wars, death, betrayal. Marcus endured all of it. Plagues that decimated the empire, rebellions that tested his reign, the betrayal of trusted generals, the loss of children, one after another, the constant presence of death not as a metaphor, but as a companion. And still, he kept showing up. Day after day, page after page, he returned to his journal, to his discipline, to his principles. Why? Because he understood something we often forget. The storms outside don't have to become storms inside. He didn't let heartbreak make him bitter. He let it make him better. And there's a massive difference between the two. Bitterness is easy. It's automatic. When life hurts you, when people disappoint you, when the world feels unfair, it's natural to armor up, to close off, to see everything through the lens of pain. But Marcus knew that once you let pain twist your perspective, you lose the only thing you truly control, your character. So instead, he chose the harder path, the stoic path. He didn't suppress the pain. He studied it. He examined it. He let it shape him without defining him. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That wasn't theory. That was survival, because outside events were a relentless flood. Plagues, civil unrest, war on multiple borders, personal tragedy. Marcus could have collapsed. He could have turned cruel, detached, cynical, but he didn't. He chose to keep showing up, fully, honestly, even when it broke his heart. He lost his children and still reminded himself not to expect permanence. "You could leave life right now," he wrote. "Let that determine what you do and say and think." This wasn't morbid. It was grounding. It was his way of staying connected to what mattered. Because when death sits close, you stop wasting time. You stop taking people for granted. You stop running from discomfort and start showing up for life exactly as it is, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. He didn't glamorize suffering, but he didn't avoid it either. He believed deeply that pain is a teacher, not a punishment, a lesson in what we value, a mirror of our ego, a test of our principles. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Marcus lived that. He didn't escape the darkness. He walked through it, wrote through it, grew through it. Every line of Meditations is a man wrestling with heartbreak, disappointment, injustice, and still choosing virtue. Think about that the next time life punches you in the gut, when you feel abandoned, when your plans fall apart, when someone you trust turns their back. You have two choices, harden or grow. Marcus chose to grow. He could have used power to numb himself, distraction, pleasure, anger, but he didn't. He chose to face reality, fully awake. He reminded himself, if it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. That wasn't coldness. That was resilience. It was a refusal to be ruled by resentment, betrayal. He faced it. Loss, he accepted it. War, he led through it. Every time life knocked him down, he got back up. Not because he was invincible, but because he was grounded in values, in discipline, in the constant reminder that this moment, no matter how painful, was shaping him. There's a reason we still read Marcus 2,000 years later. Not because he was perfect, but because he kept going, kept learning, kept loving virtue more than comfort. When the Antonine Plague ravaged the empire, he didn't flee to safety. He stayed, served, led. Even as death swept through the population, even as his own health declined, he chose duty, chose presence, chose purpose. That's what showing up looks like. And we're not talking about grand gestures. Showing up isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it means simply getting out of bed when you don't want to, writing the truth when it scares you, being kind when your heart is still broken, owning your emotions instead of unloading them on others, choosing the next right thing when everything feels wrong. Showing up isn't about being unshakable. It's about being committed. Committed to growth, committed to your principles, committed to living with clarity even in chaos. Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Marcus made showing up a habit, not a one-time act of bravery, but a repeated discipline, a decision made each day, not to give up, not to numb out, not to let bitterness take root. He chose to believe that life was still worth showing up for, even when it broke him, especially when it broke him. Because heartbreak doesn't have to end you. It can open you. It can soften the ego, expand the soul, clarify what matters. Pain has that power, if you let it teach you. Socrates, even on trial for his life, refused to abandon his principles. He didn't beg, didn't flatter, didn't sell out. He stood in truth, calmly, firmly, fully present. Because like Marcus, he understood, your circumstances don't define your strength, your choices do. The Stoics never promised comfort, they promised clarity, and clarity begins when you stop asking, why me, and start asking, what now? Marcus faced unspeakable loss, and instead of collapsing, he wrote. Instead of hiding, he led. Instead of turning cold, he turned inward. He wasn't pretending to be okay. He was practicing being unbroken. That's real strength, not pretending life is fine, but choosing to live fully anyway. When everything feels like it's falling apart, your relationships, your career, your sense of identity, you have one power no one can take from you, the power to stay engaged, not with perfection, but with presence, to keep showing up, to breathe, to reflect, to act from virtue instead of pain. Marcus could have written angry books. He could have used his position to rewrite the narrative, blame others, justify himself. But instead, he wrote meditations, not for glory, not for sympathy, but for self-correction, for realignment, for remembering what mattered. He asked himself, over and over, what is in my control? Because that question was his anchor, and it can be yours too, no matter what you're facing, betrayal, loss, heartbreak, disappointment. You have a choice. Will you let it close your heart or deepen your character? Bitterness is easy. Just stop caring, build walls, expect the worst. But that's not strength. That's fear in disguise. Real strength is vulnerability with discipline. It's saying, yes, I've been hurt. Yes, I feel lost. But I still choose to love, still choose to lead, still choose to live. Not perfectly, but honestly. So when life knocks the breath out of you, remember Marcus. Remember the emperor who cried in silence, wrote to himself in grief, and chose action when retreat was easier. He showed up for life, even when it was breaking him. And that choice, that daily, humble, human choice, is what made him great. Not the throne, not the power, not the empire, but the quiet decision to keep his heart open when the world tried to shut it. You have that same power. You can keep showing up, not for the world's approval, but for your own evolution, for the person you're becoming through the struggle, for the peace that waits on the other side of persistence. Let pain shape you, not define you. Let heartbreak refine you, not harden you. And let Marcus remind you that being broken doesn't mean you're done. It means you're being rebuilt, wiser, clearer, deeper. So stand up, show up. Even now, especially now, your co-worker, your ex, that driver who cut you off. They're not blocks in your path, they're the path itself. It doesn't always feel that way. It feels like they're interruptions, obstacles, roadblocks to your peace and progress. The co-worker who micromanages, the ex who left things unresolved, the stranger who disrespects you with a horn blast or a finger in traffic. You tell yourself, if they weren't in the way, I'd be fine. But Marcus Aurelius reminds us, they are the way. He wrote, people are your proper occupation, not your distraction, not your excuse, but your work, not to fix them, not to judge them, but to meet them as tests of your own discipline, your kindness, your values. That's the part we miss. We think growth happens in solitude, in silence, on mountaintops and meditation pillows. But it's easy to be calm when no one's annoying you. It's easy to be kind when no one's triggering you. The real test, the real measure of who you are, is how you respond to the people who challenge your ego, your patience, your expectations. Marcus knew this because he lived it. He wasn't journaling from a monastery. He was writing while leading armies, while managing senators, while grieving lost children and navigating betrayals in his court. Every day people pulled at his energy, tested his integrity, demanded his time, and instead of resenting them, he used them as mirrors, as reminders, as practice. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." When he said that, he wasn't just talking about illness or misfortune. He was talking about people too, because nothing triggers us faster than other people. They push our buttons, stir our insecurities, reflect the parts of us we haven't fully mastered. But if you let them, they also reveal your growth, your gaps, your grace. Let's be honest. It's easy to love humanity in theory. It's people in real life who make it hard. The friend who flakes, the boss who criticizes, the parent who never seems satisfied. And yet, these are the moments that define you, not just as a stoic, but as a human being. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That's exactly what Marcus practiced. He didn't just tolerate people. He used his reactions to them as signals. If he felt anger rising, that was an invitation to study it. If he felt superior, that was a cue to check his pride. If he felt annoyed, that was a challenge to choose patience. This isn't about letting people walk all over you. It's about not letting them knock you off your path. The truth is, anyone can meditate in a quiet room. The real work is staying centered when someone is disrespectful in a meeting, when your ex texts something passive-aggressive, when someone cuts you off in traffic and your instinct is to respond with rage. Marcus didn't aim to control others. He aimed to control himself. And that's the only real power any of us have. He reminded himself, it's not things that upset us, but our judgments about them. He extended that wisdom to people. He knew people don't upset us just by existing. It's our expectations, our attachments, our reactions to who we think they should be that upset us. So what if we dropped the judgment? What if we saw each difficult person as a trainer showing up to refine our patience, to sharpen our understanding, to expose the parts of us that still need work? You don't need more peace and quiet to grow. You need the humility to see growth in chaos, in conflict, in discomfort. That means your co-worker's constant negativity. That's your training ground for compassion. Your ex's bitterness, a test of your boundaries. That rude driver, a masterclass in self-regulation. They're not obstacles. They're the curriculum. Think about it like this. You're a sculptor, and these people are the chisels. Not because they're always right, but because they shape you. They force you to clarify your values, your reactions, your identity. Plato wrote, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." Marcus didn't use this idea to excuse poor behavior, but to remind himself that empathy is part of strength, that understanding is part of wisdom, and that kindness isn't weakness, it's evidence of inner mastery. Because let's face it, anyone can snap, anyone can retaliate, but to stay composed when provoked, that's power. The person who triggers you the most is your greatest teacher. Not because they're wise, but because they reveal your edges, the places where you still react instead of respond, where your ego still takes the wheel, where your principles waver. And that's where the work begins. Imagine this. You walk into work, and your colleague makes another passive comment. You feel your body tighten, your brain race for a comeback. But then, something shifts. You remember, this isn't about them. This is about you, your center, your standard. So instead of reacting, you breathe. You return to principle. You choose the higher response, not because they deserve it, but because you do. You deserve to live untangled by pettiness, unshaken by immaturity, uncontrolled by others' chaos. That's not weakness, that's stoic strength. Marcus knew the world wouldn't stop testing him, people wouldn't stop being people. So he stopped expecting them to change and focused on mastering his own mind. He wrote, "When someone does wrong, you must forgive him, but not because he deserves forgiveness. The wrongdoer may not, but because you deserve peace." That's the essence of stoic resilience. Not reactive, not passive, but principled, steady, awake. And let's be clear, this doesn't mean you stay in toxic situations. It means you stop outsourcing your inner state to external behavior. You can walk away and still be kind. You can set boundaries and still show grace. You can disagree and still remain composed. Because real discipline isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about channeling it with awareness, turning anger into clarity, turning pain into insight, turning conflict into practice. Socrates said, "The greatest way to live with honor in this world is to be what we pretend to be." Most people pretend to be above the drama, but fold when challenged. Marcus aimed to live it, to embody the values he wrote about. And that's why he kept reminding himself, the world doesn't owe you peace. You have to cultivate it. And you do that in the hard moments, not in theory, but in real time. When someone disrespects you, when someone misunderstands you, when someone disappoints you, and you don't let it make you smaller. You don't let it harden you. You meet it with clarity, with courage, with compassion. That's stoicism lived, not just studied. That's what Marcus meant when he said people are your proper occupation. Not that you have to fix them, but that they give you the opportunity to practice every virtue you claim to believe in. Patience, wisdom, courage, discipline, forgiveness. These aren't ideas, they're actions. And your ex, your co-worker, that driver, they are the training ground. They are not outside your path. They are the path. And every time you meet them with virtue instead of vengeance, you're not letting them win. You're letting you win. You're affirming your values, building your identity, solidifying your peace. So stop waiting for the world to make it easier. Get better at showing up stronger, not louder, not angrier, stronger. Because that's how you reclaim your power, not by controlling them, but by mastering yourself. Marcus knew that. Now, you do too. What if the thing you hate is the thing that's helping you most? We don't like to think that way. Pain is supposed to be bad. Frustration is something we're told to avoid. Discomfort? That's failure, right? But the Stoics offer a different lens, a reframe. What if the very thing you're trying to run from is the thing that's shaping you? What if the obstacle isn't just blocking your path? It is your path. This is the Stoic shift. Pain becomes fuel. Problems become practice. Everything becomes an opportunity, if you choose to see it that way. That's not toxic positivity. It's not pretending that everything feels good. It's something deeper. It's the discipline of asking, what is this teaching me? Even when you're in the middle of the mess. It's refusing to let pain be wasted. Marcus Aurelius didn't have an easy life. He didn't write about struggle in theory. He wrote from within it. He buried children, led wars, endured plagues, was betrayed by friends, faced sickness, insomnia, and enormous pressure. And yet, over and over, he reminded himself, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. It sounds poetic, but it's also painfully practical. He was saying, this thing I hate, this thing I didn't ask for. It's exactly what I need. Why? Because adversity doesn't just show you who you are. It makes you who you are. Think about the times in your life that changed you most. Was it comfort that transformed you? Or was it pressure, loss, challenge? Almost always, it's the hard moments